Please join me in welcoming Luke Wroblewski on stage.
Hello, everybody. I have the pleasure of talking to you after lunch and at 4:45 in the morning my time. So as a result of that, I brought sound effects, which I hope kind of wake us all up a little bit, because I definitely need it. So here we go. Can we make that a little louder? Didn't wake me up enough yet. So thank you for having me. And I brought all of my little AI guys today. Here they are. There we go. Feel that? Woo! So here we are, ready to talk about how AI ate my website. And I've heard a bunch of speakers come up and apologize for talking about AI. I am not going to apologize for talking about AI. In fact, over the past X number of years, I've been dreaming of a conference where everybody talks about AI, because I think we need to figure this out, right? There's so much to unpack here. There's so much to get right. There's so much to learn. I love the fact that everybody's talking about it. But what I'm going to do differently, I'm not going to talk at a high level. I'm going to go down into the guts. I'm going to go down to the weeds. I'm going to talk about the details behind AI applications. I'm going to show screenshots. I'm going to show system diagrams, and really unpack all the different layers that AI is touching. Because that's another reason why I think we should all be talking about this. There's so many different points in products and in technology and the whole stack where this stuff comes to bear. So, how AI ate my website. When you think about that, what do you picture? Well, maybe you might picture something scary, right? AI eating a website, like this giant computer brain. Like this giant computer brain. Eating all my little AI guys. There they go. Ah! Right? Isn't this what AI does? Just gobbles up everything on its way to global dominance? No? Don't worry, the AI guys will come back. All right, everybody awake? Did that do the job, I hope? Okay, let's continue. So I said giant computer brain. How does that work exactly? Well, you have content in all kinds of places, right? Places like my little website here on the internet. And it's not just my website. There's many, many websites out there, right? And this content that's in websites, videos, images, you name it, gets used to train machines. And those machines, when they learn an awful lot, right, they learn way more than we are able to learn because of sort of our biological constraints, right? They end up being able to do an awful lot. And for some people, that becomes sort of scary. But I don't think it's a time to actually be worried about this. I think it's at a time to unpack all these different AI capabilities and turn them into a broader toolkit that we can use in lots of different ways. So what do I mean by that? Well, there isn't just one AI model. There's lots and lots of different models that can do lots and lots of different things. What's different these days than a couple years ago is now you have a lot of these capabilities integrated into things that most of us can access for effectively free. Right? And so a lot of this stuff becomes more visible. But when you really break down all these different tasks that AI models can do, they can do a very wide assortment of things. Many language tasks, like taking audio, turning it into text, going the opposite way. Image tasks, recognizing faces, detecting objects, segmenting objects. And all these things, all these capabilities are really raw materials, right? All of these are things that we can apply to product design or apply to our companies or apply to what we're working on. And in order to demonstrate that, I want to show it being applied to something that's familiar to all of us and kind of simple on the technical scale, right? A website. In this case, this is my website. And so what I'm going to focus on is using all these AI capabilities to rethink what's possible with the web. something that we've had around for well over 30 years now, right? The web is not scary. I started my particular website almost 30 years ago, which tells you how old I am, sorry. And over those 30 years, I have added a bunch of things to it, just like probably everybody that has a website out there has done. Every company, every personal website just keeps adding more and more, right? So after 30 years, my website has 2,000 articles. It's got something like 133 videos, 2,000 images, tons of PDFs. And if you were to use kind of the modern interaction paradigm of accessing this information, you have one of two choices. You can go and search it, or you can go and browse it. And if you choose either of those two options, God bless you, because we're talking about 500,000 words. We're talking about 6,000 minutes of video. That is an awful lot for you to wade through to find what you're looking for, right? To make sense of all this stuff. And again, this is just a small personal website. Imagine much larger websites out there that have been published for also 30 years. But in the real world, like we're in right now, if you have a question for me, right, what would you do? You'd basically ask me. You'd say something like, hey, Luke, how do I figure out what metrics to use for my app? And what I would do, I would think for a second. My brain would go through all the information that I've collected over the years, maybe some of the articles I've written, maybe other things I've heard, and really quickly it would assemble an answer that I would just start responding with. All right? That's pretty amazing. Our brains, I think, are still much more amazing than AI brains. But this experience, you just ask me a question and I just respond very specifically to the very concrete thing you said, is so different than go pick through the 10 blue links, or go browse through the 243 articles that I've conveniently tagged about metrics to get your answer, right? That is a lot of pain. I think Dave a second ago talked about find tasks that suck. You know, it sucks, this sucks. This is long-winded, this is repetitive, this is boring, and this is frustrating. I think you can tick like every one of those little boxes he had on his paradigm. Nobody wants to click the link, click the link, you know? So what if instead we could get closer to answering the question the way I would in real life? That is, I'd go through all the things I've written or said on a topic, put them together into a coherent reply, cite the sources, let you go deeper, right? So in this case, somebody asks, how do I pick metrics for my app? And in this re-envisioned experience of my website, which I'll talk you through in a little bit. And by the way, you can go use it right now, ask.lukew.com if you want. Here comes an answer, how to pick the right metrics. And you see there's a couple citations. The first one comes from a video of a talk like this one. I can click on it, and not only will it take me to that video, it'll take me exactly to that part of the video where I'm talking about, if you can see the slide, how to decide what to measure. Right? So looked through all the information, found the most relevant things, picked out the portion of the video that best answers it, used that as a citation, and took you in there. Right? And also, I should note that on this page, the transcript, the description, the topics, the ability to ask questions just to this video, all AI-powered and AI-generated. And I'll go through that in a bit more detail, but in a big picture, this is what happens when a bunch of AI models effectively eat all the pieces of information that make up my website and spit out a very different interaction model. Now, when I say that, a lot of people want to know how, but first I'll look at what, and then I'll jump into the how. So some of you may be seeing this, and you may be thinking, oh no, here's another chat bot, right? By the way, I own chatsucks.com. So if anybody wants to visit chatsucks.com, have at it. As I present the chat interface to you. Whoa. But a chat design pattern, right? Like the design pattern of chat is familiar to all of us because we spend way too much time in our messaging apps. Everybody sees this kind of thing, right? And basically the way it works is this alternating messages. You say something, I say something. The size of the message depends on the amount of text that's in there. If a message is long, it grows. And when you just blindly take these sort of messaging app design patterns and apply them to some of these use cases where AI is parsing a lot of data and serving a bit of a different role than a conversation about where to go eat, you'll find technical problems. So Kate from Nielsen Norman Group talked earlier. This is one of their studies from, I don't know, a year and a half or maybe 2 years ago, just outlining some of the pain points with these chat interfaces. People have a hard time finding things previously. They can no longer scan through the information and basically just get really frustrated having to deal with these long scrolling threads when they're trying to get things done. So how do we get around some of that? Well, to account for this and a couple other considerations, the design patterns inside of the Ask Luke W interface are a little different. So instead of looking exactly like chat, they look a little bit more like this. And what does that mean? Well, on the right, you can see here, all of the previous question and answer pairs actually get collapsed. And only the current question and answer pair is open by default. A lot of these interfaces have moved to a pattern now where they scroll up and only show you the current question and answer and kind of hide all the stuff at the top. But what this allows you to do is, and I'll show you kind of a big screen version of this, allows you to really quickly scan those previous things. You can see the question and then some of the answers, so you can find one, open it back up, and get the information right there. And the reason why I point this out is this, if you look at it from just a design pattern perspective, a lot of people like to look at design, which design pattern should I use? This ends up looking a little bit more like an FAQ, right, where there's kind of like one overall question field, and then a bunch of the questions and answers get collapsed until you open them. It looks a little bit more like that type of pattern than this traditional sort of chatbot back and forth pattern. And even small things like just changing the interaction design of this helps set different expectation, also changes how people interact with this stuff. And I like to point this out because it's a nice example of how if you actually are starting with the problem to solve, you may end up with a different solution than if you just say, oh, I should use chat. What's a chat pattern look like? So many times you see this sort of thing happen, right? We're going to start the design process by doing this competitive audit. And we're going to look at how did they do this? How did they do this? We print it out, we look on the wall, and we try to find patterns, and then we copy it. And whether or not you're copying intention or not, once you see like 100 examples of something, it's very, very hard to get it out of your head. Right? So everything ends up looking exactly the same. And whether or not there's problems with it or not, we don't know, because we just started by copying the solution instead of understanding the problem. And you can see here, why do so many design solutions look the same? It's because everybody's looking at what everybody else is doing. But in the couple screenshots I've shown you of this interface so far, I've excluded a couple important things just to simplify it, but now I'll start gradually bringing them back and explain the role of each of these elements. So one of the things I excluded happens after every response here, which are these follow-on and suggested questions. Dave mentioned there's some things like this inside a Copilot. Again, lots of products have started to adopt this kind of thing now. But what this allows you to do is get over that empty text box problem in a lot of ways, because it gives you the ability to figure out what to do next. What can the system do? What should I do? And in this case, the way these are calculated, the first two are actually relevant to the question you just asked, and then the next couple are more broad, so they take you out of that scope so you can go elsewhere. And when we started designing this, we sort of knew it would be really important to give people a sense of what does the system do and how does it do it. But it took some iteration to get to that UI, even though that UI looks simple. So in the first iteration, we put like this little, see the light bulb icon there? If you click that light bulb icon, it would give you this big thing. What can I do here? How does this work? What are all the different questions I could ask? And then nobody really knows what the light bulb icon is, obviously. So then later we changed it to what else can I ask? But in each of these cases, the burden is on the person to click that to get that information, right? So that kind of sucks. So then we moved to a model where we'd put the questions in line, but we tried to make them look different than the answers. Here's another example of that, right? until finally we iterated into something that basically just makes these follow-on suggestions look like part of the answer, with just a very, very subtle little difference. There's just a little line separating the two things. And so they just sort of appealed directly in line. And this is another common thing that happens all the time. When you start by adding something to a UI, you're always like, oh, how do I make it different? And people notice it, and how do, And so many times the actual solution is to make it look more like everything else than to make it less, because things that don't look the same, usually people ignore. So here, the question comes in, and right afterwards show up those answers. At the beginning of this year, I ran a little usability test on this site just to see how it was performing, if there was things we could fix. It had been around for maybe a year and a half at that point. And we just tried to figure out, what could we do better? And one of the things that immediately came up was these suggested questions not only helped people know what to do, but it also made them feel confident that they understood the whole concept, right? What is this? Oh, I see. I ask things like this. These are the types of topics I can get here. So it helps people understand what to do, but it also makes them feel confident in doing it, which is a pretty big deal. And speaking of getting people to the value of this system, I mentioned before that the way it works is it finds information that's most relevant to answer that question, right? And then stitches them together, and it provides these citations. And so it's another thing that I kind of skipped, but you see the little number 1s and 2s here, in addition to the citations there. Every time the information comes back, we're saying where it came from. And again, in the same testing I talked about a second ago, these were also really key to helping people understand how the system works. Right? Not only understand how the system works, but also create trust that, oh, I understand this information's coming from these sources, therefore I get it. And these two examples are a really nice illustration of this other general principle that I like to talk about a lot, which is get people to product value as fast as possible. What the hell is this? Oh, suggested questions give you a sense of what kind of information you can get out of here. How the hell does this work? Oh, these citations are coming back. So it's pulling from this set of information. Okay, I get it. Right? And making those the most visible elements and the most integrated elements in the UI goes a really long way to giving people the big picture of what the product's about. So these citations, though, don't just answer the question, where does this information come from? They actually serve as an entry point into what I call a deeper object-specific experience. And you're like, what the hell does that mean? Well, I've shown you a few times. You ask a question, you get an answer, and these little cards show up over here, right? That tell you where that information came from. But if you access one of those cards, they actually open up and become an embedded little content experience. So what does that look like? Let me show you. So here you're asking a question about, does free shipping help make e-commerce better? And you can see one of these citations is this evolving e-commerce thing here. If I tap on that, now I have a full experience of that evolving e-commerce checkout article. I can actually ask questions just within that article, or I can hit that X and ask more broad questions. I get a summary of that article, and I can do all kinds of things. And this isn't just for articles. This also works for all kinds of different object types: videos, podcasts, PDFs, images, and more. And I'm going to look at some of these object experiences and start to get into the how does this work, right? Because I keep saying I've got all this content, and then this thing's been AI-ified. How does it get AI-ified? So let's look at video files. So for a video file, you've got all of these different things, and then we start to use that assortment of AI models and capabilities that I talked to at the beginning. What would we do with a video? Well, we'd take that audio, we'd turn it into text, we'd kind of figure out who's talking when, we'd summarize it, we'd get some keywords, we'd figure out what questions it could answer, we could do object or face detection on it. So we do all of this processing to turn these video files into something that the AI can use in conjunction with all of the other content. And then we have to do a little bit of cleanup, like tell it that Luke is Luke, put some metadata on it, like what was the date of the video, maybe the location, something like that. All right? But we also need to pick out something like a thumbnail for the video. And I like this example because this just shows you how deep the AI rabbit hole goes. Right? Not only are we using AI to turn the video into text and identify speakers, and we could use it to translate it, but we can even run little tasks like this. So each video has a bunch of thumbnails that we can create pretty quickly, but how do you pick a good one? Well, what you can do is you can basically just fine-tune an existing model really lightly to teach it to pick thumbnails. This is exactly what we did on this project. And I love this example because it just illustrates if you can quickly kind of like explain how to do things, you can likely train a model to do it for you. So for those 150 videos or whatever, I'm not going to go through there and find all of the perfect thumbnails. I'm just going to give it like 10 examples. Of this, I would pick this. Of this, I would pick this. Of this, I would pick this. Right? And in this case, you can see it picked the which Paris girl are you with a dumb expression on my face. So perfect. But if you can model a behavior, you can teach a machine to do it. So not only are we using machines and AI models to break down this content, we're also using it to select content, right? To do, again, this sort of manual repetitive work that we wouldn't want to do before. And it's not just video files, it's also audio files. So you could take a bunch of audio files, we do the same thing, we run a bunch of these AI tasks on them, we do some processing and cleanup, right? We do the same thing for articles. We would use different tasks for articles than we would use for videos. But all this stuff gets really cleaned up, and it's also super important to note that the thing that makes a good AI system is the quality of the data you put into it. So this may seem like a lot of work to clean these files up and process them and all that, but like they are key to making the system work. Because what we do with all that cleaned up content that we've broken down from our articles and videos and audio files is they get mapped into this vector space that kind of becomes a fuzzy database we can retrieve over. So things that are mobile-ish go over here, things that are e-commerce-ish go over here, right? And now we have this like semantic, fuzzy, human-like way to search over all this information, whether it came from a video, an article, or whether it came from a text file. And I'll just show a really quick diagram here. I won't spend too much time on this, but this is the basics of creating an AI application in many ways. You have some content, you clean that content up, you stick it into something that machines are good at searching over, and you don't just search over it one way, you search over it a bunch of different ways, and then you can even rank how that comes out. Then you pull all that stuff together to create an answer or to create something, a generation. It could be an image, it could be a video. You might generate a bunch of different things, and then you rank to find the best version of that. And the most important thing is you've got to learn from what comes out one side to the other. I think Tobias talked about like agents questioning and doing reasoning earlier today. And in each one of these things, when we do multiple retrievers and we rank them, we're doing these evaluation steps. Right? When we generate multiple things, we're evaluating what makes the most sense to actually respond with. And so, is that worth doing? That seems like a lot of work. All this document cleanup, processing, embedding, re-ranking. Why would you do that? Why not just use ChatGPT? Well, if you go and ask one of these sort of global world large language models out there a question like, why do so many designs look the same? You're going to get global world answers. You're going to get these really, really broad things. So why do designs look the same? Economic factors, functional constraints, influence of trends. Okay. If you ask LukeW.com, why do so many designs look the same? I'm going to be like, look, it's because people are copying what everybody else is doing. I'm not going to bullshit you with functional constraints and societal economic factors or whatever. And not only do you get that, what you also get is these in-depth citations, and you get these object-specific experiences that I was talking about, right? What, again, at the big picture, what I'm trying to do is mirror the way I would answer the question, not the way the collective indexing of human knowledge on the internet would answer the question. There's use cases for both, right? But the other way this experience starts to differ is once you break all this content down into these atomic bits that AI models can use, you can reassemble them any way you want. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I took all these different things, videos, audio files, and now I can reassemble them in the way I showed you the video player before, right? With this description and this transcript generated by AI, and you can go to the scrubber, see exactly what's happening. You can get this inline audio experience too, where, again, you can see I've identified the speakers when they're talking. All that stuff was built by AI models. Inside of the article reader, you can see that there's this ability to ask specific questions of it. Similar things for PDFs. And PDFs. PDFs are special, in a special as painful kind of way. So I'm going to spend like a minute just explaining why data quality matters and how putting the time into that layer gets you a much better end experience inside of these AI products. So originally when I built Ask Luke W, I just started with all the articles. So 2,000 articles, right? And you would ask a question like, what is design? And I actually liked the answer, right? It's the art of gradually applying constraints until an elegant solution remains. Then I added 370 PDFs, and the answer became something like, design is the fundamental soul of human creation. And I'm like, what is this horseshit? It started to cite this one specific PDF. And in that PDF was a page with a bunch of quotes from other people answering the question, what is design? So the machine's like, oh, what is design? It's all this. And the reason why it only cited one thing instead of all this other stuff is because when you looked at the guts of the PDF, PDFs are filled with so much crap to make the layout work that it overloads the context window of the AI model. So all of a sudden, all it's paying attention to is this one PDF page with a bunch of definitions of design. So we had to like remove all the junk, we had to re-index this, clean it up, and then also do some diversification. So don't just answer from PDFs, also look at videos and podcasts. And we got a much better answer. But technology doesn't stay still. And so what we were able to do is take a PDF page like this from one of my other talks and get the text extraction down to just that. Again, using different AI models. That's pretty good. But what happened over the past year and a half or a year and a half ago when we updated this is vision models got really good. So we replaced this whole thing with vision models that would actually create content like this to describe this image. As you can see, that is way better than what's up there, right? Garbage in, garbage out, good in, good out. Here's another example. This is what happens when we had a clean, just text extraction. And this is what happens when we're using vision models. So we applied this to all the images and got a heck of a lot better results. And again, the answer to the same question has changed, and the citation mix has changed as well. And the cool thing about this process is you can actually apply it to the 2,000 images in my website too. So now the system can actually not only answer a question, but it can actually respond with an image as well. So if you ask about the difference between AR and VR, I have a really nice description of this image created in the same way I showed you, and it can respond in line there. Coming back to the usability testing one last time, people were often intimidated by these like walls of text. So this is a nice way to break that up, right? Don't just respond with text, respond with images as well. Okay, I went through a bunch of things. It's a lot of stuff. So let me try to summarize it quickly and do so in a way that I don't end up over time. Website. Many things in website. Lot text, lot video. Use. Many things AI can do. Turn website into lots of different things, right? Once you have these things in these atomic units, you can reconfigure them in all kinds of different ways. Hence all my little AI guys here. Whee! All working behind the scenes to make this stuff happen, right? To turn speech to text, to create text summaries, to create suggested questions, to pick thumbnails. The rabbit hole goes super deep, right? There's AI from the bottom to the top of this thing. And the end result is not, wake up, some scary AI thing, but it's a new way to make use of the 30 years of content that I've published, which I actually think is super exciting, right? And why I started by saying I'm not going to apologize for talking about AI, because I wish more people were talking about AI and creating all kinds of different things that we could learn from to figure out what to do with this stuff. And I'll just end on asking my designer-made AI what designers should do about AI. And I kind of like this answer. Designers should strive to humanize technology. Emerging technologies need to be made comfortable and understandable. Cool. So thank you. And if you want to try any of this out, ask LukeW.com.